Hey, waiting for 976 here with the truth. Mitt Romney. Now, I really don't like this guy. And it's not just the fact that he's GOP, but he's real rich, too. Well, it's not just real rich, he's scum. And here's one from ABC News. Romney says GOP not party of the rich, but of those who want to be rich. At a fundraiser at a country club in Mississippi, this evening, that was expected to raise a record-breaking $1.7 million. Mitt Romney defended the Republican Party against its reputation as the party of the rich, explaining that really it's the party focused on helping the poor. We're accused, by the way, in our party of being the party of the rich, Romney said, and it's an awful moniker because that's just not true. We're the party of the people who want to get rich, and we're also the party of the people who want to care for to help people from getting poor. We want to help the poor. We actually want to help the poor so much that Paul Ryan made a budget plan cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And you guys always say, well, those help cause poverty and stuff. Whenever anyone who actually does any research knows that Social Security lifted to ever since it was introduced back during the Great Depression, that it got 2/3 of senior citizens out of poverty. And food stamps are the most stimulative thing you can do. You know, people spend money when they like on food and things like that. It creates jobs, but that's a whole other thing. But the fact is that Reaganomics has destroyed the Republican Party. There was a time when you could even say the Republican Party was for the poor as well, when Dwight Eisenhower had taxes at 92% on the rich. He did, and excuse me, that Nixon even had taxes at 70%. Nixon. Hell, Reagan had them at 50%. So when people call Ronald Reagan a great tax-cutting president, no, he wasn't. But Romney, on the other hand, pays 15% taxes, and that's lower than his secretary. And well, you've heard that stuff before. But it's just such a laughable joke that to think that the Republican Party gives a damn about poor people. Maybe some of the people do, and maybe one or two representatives, and maybe one senator, but the large majority of you don't. And to go to Mississippi, where they have some of the highest poverty out of wedlock pregnancies and children and things like that, that's even more despicable. Because what has caused our economy, Mr. Romney, showing that you don't know a damn thing, you and the Republicans don't, from getting healthier? The poor are getting poorer. Is it time to raise the minimum wage? From The Atlantic. One of the harshest realities of America's slow economic recovery, and there are many, is the fact that in spite of modest job growth, pay for workers is falling. Year over year, average inflation-adjusted wages have dropped by 0.6% for all private sector employees. They're down a full 1% for non-supervisors. Your retail salespeople, your shop floor factory workers, your cashiers. In other words, even as the overall employment picture has improved in fits and starts, the working poor are getting poorer. You'll see a chart here, but it shows that from decade after decade, or year after year in this decade, that we have been wages have been stagnant, and they've been going down. So that and of course you'll hear the libertarian right-wing bullshit response of if you wait a minute, wait, that would hurt the job creation. An article that destroys that lie. The sin of wages. John Kerry this is from 2004 from Slate. John Kerry wants to raise the minimum wage, and President Bush, at least in principle, is on board, provided, says the president's spokesperson, that it can be done without placing unreasonable cost on job creators. The president is trying to cast doubt on Kerry's proposal by alluding to the old carnage that minimum wage causes unemployment and therefore hurt the very people they're supposed to help. Obviously, that's Occasionally true if you contribute $6 an hour to your employer's bottom line, and if he is forced to pay you $7 an hour, you'll soon find yourself out on the street. But so what? Sure, you've lost your job, but don't forget that was a minimum wage job in the first place. Losing a lousy job might not be a whole lot worse than keeping it. Meanwhile, lots of minimum wage workers keep their jobs and are presumably grateful to the politicians who raise their wages. In fact, the power of the minimum wage to kill jobs has been greatly overestimated. Nowadays, most labor economists will tell you that minimum wage have at most a tiny impact on employment. 20 years ago, they'd have told you otherwise. Back then, dozens of published studies concluded that minimum wage had put a lot of people, especially teenagers, blacks, and women, out of work. As the studies continue to pile up, you might think we have grown more confident about their common conclusion. Instead, the opposite happened. Even though the studies were all in agreement, they managed to undercut each other. Here's how. Ordinarily, studies with large sample sizes should be more convincing than studies with small sample sizes. Falling in the face of 10,000 workers should tell you more than falling in the face of 1,000 workers. But the minimum wage studies, that wasn't happening. According to standard tests of statistical significance, the results of the large-scale studies were by and large neither more nor less significant than the results of small-scale studies. That's screwy enough to suggest that the studies had been published couldn't possibly be a representative sample of the studies being concluded. Here's why that matters. Even if minimum wage doesn't affect employment at all, about 5 out of every 100 studies will, for unavoidable statistical reasons, appear to show a significant effect. If you could read all 100 studies, that wouldn't be a problem. 95 conclude the minimum wage is pretty harmless as far as employment goes. 5 concluded it as a big job killer. You realize that the latter 5 are spurious, and you draw the appropriate conclusion. But if the 95 studies found that had no effect deemed uninteresting and never got published, then all you'd see are the spurious 5, and then the next year another 5, and the next year another 5. So you see how this is done, folks? To spin and lie their angle and point of view. Because when you ask for examples, they always give you the same websites. These right-wingers do, libertarians and the Mitt Romneys and all of them. They will. Mitt Romney and them will quote the same source. But then when you go out on a limb and even choose a small website that has accurate information, they'll be like, that's a blog, what did that matter? It matters because it's not just some big corporate bought off website or news article telling you this. In other words, it's not the Cato Institute. So when Romney says that the GOP are the people who want to be rich, the poor are getting poorer. Mitt, like that's Obama's plans and stuff. No, Obama's plans have actually put a lot of people back to work. But Obama himself has done hardly nothing. And he seems to want to help the bankers a lot. He doesn't do nothing about the corruption on Wall Street. So he's no better. But the fact is that Mitt, you're a hell of a lot worse than Obama. And that's saying a lot. You are Wall Street's little puppet, aren't you? And I said it's the talking points of Cato and them. Minimum wage kills jobs. Raising the minimum wage will kill jobs and everything. No. We need to raise wages for workers because it needs to keep up with inflation. And that's the big problem we're having with our economy. So stop the lies, will you? Anyway. Just go to the links below if you want to read the full articles and stuff. But like I said, this just shows how dishonest and crooked that the right-wingers are. I mean, they'll publish studies and everything, and damn well won't do their accurate research, or they'll focus on a small group and everything, so that way it'll be like, well, it's a study, and look what it shows. No. Don't believe the lies, folks, and don't believe Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, you're a twit. To actually think that you want to help people get rich when all Reaganomics has done has caused more poverty and more debt for people. And that is the truth.